All right, Amy Devine, welcome. I feel like if Summit Sober podcast takes off and I end up doing a million episodes, not going to be any guest that I would rather have than you on it. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So, wow, this is kind of surreal sitting here talking to you right now. For anyone that doesn't know the history, Amy and I go way back. We have been friends since 2014, very early, actually late 2013. Late 2013. I believe I met you in like December of 2013. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
In freaking Beijing, China, of all places. But Amy, where are you originally from? Tell us just a little bit about your background, who you are, what you do.
Okay, so I am from the UK. My parents are Irish, but I grew up in the UK, born in the UK, a place called Newbury.
Okay.
It's about an hour from London. And yeah, I grew up there and then I moved to Beijing when I was 21, straight after university.
Nice. And what prompted you to make that move?
So our friend Thomas Palmer, he was a friend of mine at school. And he moved to Beijing to teach English. He did a TEFL, and then he said, "Amy, come on over." So I followed him with another friend, and then there was five of us from the same school working for the same company where we met you
Yeah,
in Beijing.
that's pretty wild. There was definitely a big group of people from the UK over there. Let's talk about what's going on now. And I'm going to go back in time a little bit throughout this conversation, but in the moment, where are you coming to us from? And what are you currently doing?
Okay, so right now I'm in the Sacred Valley of Peru, a little town called Pisac. It's about 40 minutes from Cusco, and I am here to serve my offerings. I am a breathwork facilitator and I work with women who want to get sober. And I moved here in September. So I left Beijing in June and then I came here in September. And I've just signed my residency. So I'm here to grow my business. I'm growing my online business and also offering retreats and workshops and classes here in the valley.
That's really interesting. And from what I've seen on your social media, it looks like you've been in some other places too. So is Peru your home base, but are you also traveling around or, um, are you just pretty much in Peru all the time?
So I'm based here now. When I came here in September, I came for 3 months and I was thinking, okay, I need to get some traveling done before I like settle. So I went to Mexico and then Guatemala and now I'm back here.
So your offering in your business is called Devine Breath, correct?
Yes, my business is called Devine Breath.
Okay, the business is Devine Breath. And your mission, though, is around sobriety. You're trying to help women that have had an alcohol or drinking, disorder or problem, whatever the correct way to say it would be. You're trying to help them get sober, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
will you tell me just a little bit more about that, how you got into that, and just the kind of overview there?
Sure, yeah. So I'm also on a sober journey myself, and I was a teacher for many, many years, and I sat with plant medicine and received the information that teaching for me in this big, amazing matrix city is not for me anymore. And I'm really trying to get down to what my purpose is and what helped me the most in my healing journey. One of the main things was breath work, a very powerful tool that helped me to relax my nervous system. And so I trained to become a breathwork facilitator. And now I am on the path of helping others find their breath. So I'm just about to launch a program called Numb No More, which is a one-to-one mentorship, a 90-day program. I work with women one-on-one who would like to get sober. And um, my sobriety, just as an overview, my sobriety started off in AA, the 12-step recovery, which is an amazing program, amazing program. However, there are some things missing.
Okay.
So in my journey, it was really, really important for me to get to the root of why I was drinking, why I was numbing. Um, and the body is such a major part of why we drink, right? A lot of us are in fight or flight or anxious or have experienced trauma. So the breath is this gateway to healing. So in my program, I'm going to be walking hand in hand with these women, and we're going to be going through 90 days. We're going to meet every week. We're going to breathe. We're going to do shadow work, inner child work. And also, I've got a Sober Sisterhood community where we're going to meet and we're going to be in circle and we're going to be in community, which is a huge, huge part of recovery. So yeah, that is a small overview of what I'm currently making, and that is going to be launching next week, and this podcast will be out by then. So yeah.
Um, I got a lot of questions to ask you around that, but real quick, if you're okay with it, let's like, I don't know where you want to go back to, but and I think speaking, me too. I also am like you. I am on a sober journey, trying to completely eliminate alcohol, or not trying to, but eliminating alcohol completely from my life because it's pretty much caused nothing good really to ever come out of it. And you and I go back. We've had a lot of experiences together. We've had a lot of fun. We've traveled to a lot of different countries and places throughout Asia together, and definitely have gone out and drank a lot together. I think I was telling you before we started recording, if anybody would have told me like 2018, 2019 that me and you would be doing what we're doing, I would have been mind blowing. No way I would have believed those people. Tell us a little bit, I guess go back as far as you are comfortable or want to, or where did it start? What would you say was your intro into alcohol? Tell us a little bit about that journey, and then maybe when you started to think it was maybe a problem. And you can, share as much or as little as you like there.
No, I love that question. Yeah, we go way back, and we did have a lot of fun, right? And we did a lot of traveling, and that's the thing with alcohol. You can sometimes do all these amazing things and still have a huge issue with it and not really understand, which is this gray area for people. Anyway, for me, I think I took my first drink when I was 12, the first time I got drunk, and it was a friend of mine in the area that I wasn't allowed to play with. We'd say play at that age because we're literally children, and my mom would be like, "Don't play with her," right? And of course, what did I do? I went and played with her. So she like stole her stepdad's whiskey, or what it was, port or something like that. Next thing you know, I am, completely puking up and an absolute state, whereby my little brother's teacher at the time found me on
Wow.
like the roundabout in this town that I was living, and anyway took me home, and that was the first alcohol experience that I had. But then that was just a one-time thing, but obviously I couldn't have a little bit, right? That was a sign that it was way too much. Anyway, when I got to 14 is when I started drinking heavily, when I first became, I would say, addicted to it, because it was one summer and I remember having a stomachache if I hadn't had a beer. And I think there was a mixture of things going on because um, I was very anxious, and I was getting at the point where I was going to start meeting partners and things like that. So the alcohol just helped to numb these feelings of anxiety and fear and everything. So I started drinking beer, and I was drinking like every day, I remember at that point. But I still managed to, go to school, and then I went to college, and then somehow went to university. It's all just crazy how I managed to keep it together, even though there was crazy times, but it's crazy how I managed to do each step and stay in education. So, yeah, I got to university, and that was, at university everyone drinks, so I could just kind of go along with what I'd been going on along with for years. I moved to university and people started drinking, whereas I'd been drinking for years and years. before that, so I could kind of handle my drink, if that made sense, and hide it. And I remember looking at people getting really drunk and thinking, wow, that was me when I was like 12, so that's not normal at all. And we were like 18. So, yeah, I mean, great times, fun times. And then I moved to China when I was 21. And I mean, all of this drinking was reckless, and I was the only one that was kind of drinking daily. But like I said, I could still go to university. I generally wouldn't drink during the day, unless I was like off university or whatever. But as soon as I had that chance, I was, in the bar, or whatever, drinking or drinking at home. And nobody else did. And I just kind of used the excuse of that's just what I do. But I was addicted to it and I needed it. I needed it for everything, to feel comfortable in groups, etc., etc. So, yeah, when I moved to Beijing, everybody was in this scene as well, including yourself, right? So we would
Yeah.
go out, we worked for a school, and our weekends were Monday, Tuesday. So we would leave work on a Sunday, we'd go out and we'd stay out all weekend, right? And we wouldn't stop drinking. Um, and then, yeah, like slowly, slowly, it would be quite reckless a lot of the time, but our whole friendship group was quite reckless at the time. But then I think when everybody started to calm down and grow up a bit, I continued. And then the anxiety in my body became worse, and it was just having such a negative effect. So I actually went to the doctor, and they gave me antidepressants in a space of 5 minutes. Didn't even ask me if I drank alcohol, but it was just alcohol taking over my life and all of this trauma being pushed down or whatever. Um, and then, because I was on the tablets, if I drank alongside the tablets, it would make me be really, really like a lot more drunker than I would usually get.
Hmm.
So then my friends started to notice, and I used to be like not a very nice friend to be around in the bar. So a couple of my friends would say like, Amy, come on, like this isn't normal, right? Um, and I didn't see anything wrong with it. Um, because the bars in Beijing, you can kind of go along with it. There's a big drinking culture there, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. One thing I noticed, and I've actually got a couple things I want to interject and ask you real quick. I think
yeah,
it's a good
go
point.
for it.
Like for one, everybody I tell people in Beijing, and I guess it could be this way in most big cities, but Beijing is a little bit, especially when we were there, it was like the Wild West, right? And every day and every night is kind of like a weekend because there's so many people. So there's so many different people with different work schedules. So there's always going to be something open. You can get into something on a Monday night just as much as you can on a Saturday night. So it's kind of dangerous. And I would say for anybody traveling, being aware of where you're at and those kind of things is good. But real quick, I want to back up just a little bit because you said you had your first drink at 12, right? And
Yeah.
you were drinking a lot at like 14. I got a question based on what you know, because you have traveled a ton. How much do you think like the culture of the UK plays into drinking? Because as an American, me personally, yes, I started drinking earlier than I should have, but I don't see it as much here. When I moved to China, as you know, I was pretty much the only American in that group. So I was learning tons of stuff about the UK, and it seemed like everyone talked about how they were drinking a lot at 14, 15, 16. Do you think that's something that's common with just people that have problems with alcohol, or do you think there is like a bit of a cultural difference in there?
Question. Yeah, it's definitely a culture thing. And my parents are Irish, so there's no escaping.
Mm.
But yeah, in England as a teenager, you start drinking. It wasn't just me, it's everybody pretty much. And it's kind of, you're pressured into it. You're pressured into smoking and you're pressured into drinking and God knows what else. You're not cool if you don't drink. It's about this like belonging, right? The sense of belonging. But I think the difference is that some people would just go and drink in these on these occasions, like on a Saturday night or Friday night or whatever. But then the people that have issues, they would continue on a daily basis, right? And that if that's not a sign, I don't know what is. But you know, like you would know the people that want to drink, and the people that didn't want to drink would force themselves to drink, but they didn't actually want to drink. Now, I even would say, "Come on, drink. Don't be boring." You know, I would be that person, and I wouldn't want to be around the people that aren't drinking. So it's such a pressure in British culture, yeah, to do it. But
Yeah, I mean, I thought it might be, but back to China. So this is probably, if I had to guess, when you get to this point where you're going and you get the antidepressant medicine and you've got friends telling you that this isn't normal, that's probably like what, 2019, 2020, 2020-ish, somewhere in there? Like when it got to the point where you really were like, I'm going to make a change.
2021, yeah.
Because I'm not sure if you remember, but I left in August of 2019 or September, I think September of 2019. And for that year leading up to that, I was kind of the same way. Like I was living on a different part of the city than the people I've been friends with most of my time there. So I'd only see you guys like on the weekends. But I remember that was when my drinking had gotten its worst. And there would be countless times where I wouldn't go out because I didn't want to drink around everyone and have everyone like being critical of me. And I would end up just staying at my house and drinking, which is way worse, right? Actually, I mean, if you're going to drink, you might as well at least be out with your friends. I mean, but like that's how messed up you get to thinking. Did you ever experience anything like that?
Yeah, it's a classic. You isolate because you know that what's going to happen when you're outside, right? And you know the benefits, but it's like you still do it because you need it. I drank, honestly, in my teens, I drank every night. I was drinking beer, but if I was on my own, I would be drinking bottles of wine on my own. It was normal. It was normal for that to go on, for me. Um, but the thing is with me in Beijing is I would drink at home on my own, but I would go out as well. But then when I got in from a night out, I would continue drinking. And if I had wine in the house, I would drink all of it, like, and ring people. It would just be a disaster, like I just couldn't stop. Probably because I didn't want to wake up and feel again, It was just I remember this relationship with red wine. Like it was like a loving relationship with it, you know. But yeah, I totally hear that. You isolate because you know how bad it's gonna get.
Yeah, and for me, I think kind of what, like, I was already drinking way too much. Like, for, we all worked at the school for a little bit for a couple of years there. But then when I started working on my own and more of like the freelance, uh, I had a lot more time where I was doing whatever I wanted. And a lot of times, and I know you've experienced this too, there would be times where in between classes, and I'm working with adults a lot of the times, right? So I don't want anybody listening to this think I was like walking into what you think of as a traditional schoolhouse, like messed up. But a lot of times, a lot of my clients, they may be, grown business people. So I'm not meeting with them for class until 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the evening to do an hour class with them. So I'd have time a lot of times in between classes, bored, kill time, have a couple beers. Plus you just got the energy of the city and you got everybody else hanging out and drinking. But then when I moved to the other part of the city, I was living by myself. So I didn't have any of my friend group there. And that's when I was super isolated. And that isolation even made me kind of depressed in a way. And I think out of boredom, I was like, oh, well, I can't hang out with Amy or Tom or Chris or whoever. And so I'm just going to chill here and have some drinks. But then one would turn into two, would turn into 10. And I'm like you, I would drink until whatever I had was finished. There was never like, I'm going to have a glass of wine with dinner. It was like, I'm going to drink until this bottle's finished. And then I might even walk down to the store and get a second one, right? So I was going to ask you, and I guess the reason I said all that is to say that unfortunately, and I hope other people can avoid this, but I think unfortunately for me, one of the things that opened my eyes to the drinking problem I had is the hangovers began getting incredibly difficult to bounce back from. Like I felt ill. for days sometimes, right? And then I would get to feeling better, then I'd go do the same cycle again. What is it that kind of opened your eyes to, I really got to make a change? Was it more of just people telling you stuff? Did you start having physical, like, withdrawal symptoms? Or, I mean, tell us about that part of the journey.
Yeah, wow. So hangovers have always been bad for me, like always, even when I was young. But of course, yeah, they did get worse. Like it'd be so bad that we'd be laughing at how bad I was compared to everybody else, and then like, yeah, it just got really bad. So what happened was my roommate said to me, "You have a drink problem." And I wasn't used to that. I wasn't used to the honesty of, but other friends had already mentioned as well, look, this isn't cool. You know, I think once I was at the bar and someone said to one of our friends, like, you need to sort your friend out kind of thing. So it was the shame and the embarrassment around it. And my roommate at the time, she knew someone that was in recovery in AA. And I'd never really heard of AA. Um, I'd seen it on the TV or something, but I'd never actually thought I am gonna go to a meeting or something like that. It had never crossed my mind. Anyway, it all happened very, very quickly. And she put me in contact with her friend who was in the program, and I met up with her. And that same day I went to a meeting. So it all happened like very, very quickly. And also when she said to me, you have a problem, I felt like so sorry because I did a few things in the house. Like I would come home and cook and make a mess, and then when you're like this, I was so anxious, I was so scared of like upsetting other people, the people pleasing and all these kinds of things. All I want to do is it's like a childhood coping mechanism to people please. All I want to do is make everything okay. So in a way, the people pleasing kind of helped me because I said, okay, I'll go do that. I'll go meet your friend. I'll go do that, which I'm grateful for. Yeah, and then I went to my first meeting um, that night. Um, but that wasn't the first. I got clean for 6 months and then I started drinking again. But you know, that was it was like really quick. There was not really much thought into it. I had time to think about the meeting and I knew I was going to go to a meeting that day. I wouldn't have met her, you know, because she met me with her baby. She was breastfeeding. She was so nice to me, right? I was like, this woman's come out and, with her baby and she's like inviting me. So, yes, of course I'm going to go with you.
Yeah.
And you're so weak and vulnerable at that point. And if someone's nice to you, you're going to kind of go along with it.
Yeah. What was your impression in that first meeting?
Yeah, so I looked at the door and there was like AA written, and I was like almost sick. I was like, oh God, oh my gosh, what is this? And I walked in and it was a full meeting. It was a Friday night. There was many people. People were just smiling, um, really happy for me to be there. And I just remember it was like it was an evening, about 7 o'clock in the evening, and I remember just like on the edge of my chair, feeling like really tense, and remember it like I just wanted to cry because everybody was sharing exactly what was going on for me, the same thing. And when you go into an AA meeting, they always talk about step one. If they know you're a newcomer, they will talk about the first step, which is people sharing their story about their first encounter with the program and how life was, etc. So you relate.
Well, yeah, I've actually been into a couple of them myself, um,
Mm.
but yeah, I think there's pros and cons, right? But to get back to what you were talking about, you went to that. You actually went 6 months without drinking. For people that have never
Yeah.
had a problem, I don't think it's easy to understand. Actually, going 6 months without drinking again is actually unbelievably impressive. I mean, that is an almost impossible
Yeah.
thing to do for your first time.
Yeah, but that's why the program's so good at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
It's like because because of what comes alongside of alcoholism, like you're usually quite vulnerable and um, you do anything kind of thing. And for me, it was the people pleasing thing because I'd made friends and I didn't want to let anyone down, which is obviously something that you need to heal in the meantime, but it kind of benefited me at the beginning. So they say 90 meetings in 90 days. So there wasn't a meeting every day in Beijing, but I went to every single one that I could. So it was like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I was at meetings.
Wow.
So like when I was going to drink on a Friday, I would go to a meeting, but I enjoyed it. I would go there and I remember now though I'd have cravings because I'd go past Great Leap to
Hmm.
get to the meeting on a Friday night. But Friday was the most triggering day for me, obviously. But you make friends, friends that you've never had before because you can get deep and you can really be honest about the shit that you've been doing, basically. Like all the stuff you've been hiding that you wouldn't tell your friends, you know?
Yeah, for sure. So that had to have been because I'm imagining, and other people that haven't been there wouldn't be able, but just think of a part of the city where all the bars, all the really cool like night spots, all of the action is, and that's where this AA meeting is. So you have to walk through that.
Close by, yeah. Yeah, it's close by.
I can imagine. So I'm just curious now, after the 6 months, you said you drink again. Let me
Yeah.
ask, was that purposeful? Did you think, all right, I'm good now, I can do this? Or was it like an accidental slip up type situation?
So a relapse is usually always planned in time. You don't, it's not often I planned it for weeks because, we don't want to be an alcoholic. Like this is what I was saying at the time, you don't want to be this person that's addicted and they can never drink again, right? So I didn't want to and I didn't accept it because I had alcohol by my side my whole, since I was 14 years old. It was like grief, How am I going to cope without it? Blah, blah, blah. And then it was coming up to Christmas, right? We were getting ready for Christmas. I was like, oh, maybe I can drink now. And everybody thought, okay, probably Amy's learned her lesson now as well, like, because I thought that as well, because as well, you kind of go for a process of grieving that old you, wanting it back. Your friends grieve you as well. So it's kind of, and at that point, I could have been a person that just needed a few weeks off or whatever. People don't understand addiction until you've been through it, right? Or you've had it yourself. So I was just kind of looking for my friends to give me the give me the go, the go for it. And but the thing is, obviously, I later found out that, you know, but I needed to do that. I needed to relapse. Relapse is part of my story because if I hadn't, then God knows where I'd be, right? So I had a beer. I remember I went to Sannerton. I had a beer with my friends, and they were like, "All right, let's go home now." And I was like, "What? What do you mean?" I didn't want to have one. And I remember walking home. It was a summer evening. No, it wasn't. It wasn't summer. It was December. And kind of feeling like, "Oh, I've got this, when I didn't. But but yeah, so I continued to drink for a year and a half and it was awful. As in a sense, like once you go into the rooms, AA never leaves your shoulder. You know that you've got an addiction, right? Because of all the stories. But I tried to moderate. That was quite funny. Moderation's not real. Like New Year's Eve, I was doing like champagne and spritzers, and I really wanted to be able to moderate so hard, but I was just in my head the whole time thinking about the drink, how much I can have, how much I can't have.
Yeah, I think a couple of interesting things you mentioned that really hit home with me. For one, I can't tell you the amount of times where I had that same, I'm driving home or I'm walking home, wherever, it depends on I'm living, and I get that urge and I'm like, oh, I can handle it this time. I'm good. And then I go have that drink and it spirals out of control. So to your moderation point, I also agree that there's no such thing with moderation. And I don't want to attack alcohol. Like, that's not necessarily my mission. There are some people, I believe, who can have that one beer after
Yeah.
work with a buddy and go home. I just had to accept that's not me and that never will be me. And the other thing you said that I think is so spot on, I don't know that I've ever heard it kind of laid out like that. You said you were trying at New Year's Eve to, you know, have a little bit of champagne and, moderate yourself, but the whole time you were in your head. That's honestly for the last year that I was living overseas, and then the 2-3 years that I came home after that. Anytime I drank, I actually didn't enjoy it. Because the whole time I was just thinking to myself, you shouldn't be drinking.
Yeah.
Now, other people around me wouldn't have known that, but the whole time I would be drinking, I knew better. Like, I knew I shouldn't have been doing it. And I don't think I've ever thought about it that way until you said what you said just now,
Mm.
which
Yeah.
is interesting. So after the 6 months of being sober, you drank again for like a year and a half.
Yeah.
Was it
Yeah.
as regular? Was it as frequently? Like, was it out of control?
I mean, yeah, it would always get out of control, but I was always trying to be on my best behavior, right? So I'd go out with my friends and I'd be like, "Oh, I've only had a couple, like I remember now that you've just put that into my field, I'm like, I would just always be talking about it. Like, oh, I'm better now with alcohol. See, but it would make me feel like shit, so depressed, so down. It's like the lonely man in the bar, you're the lonely one in the group because you're just all you're thinking about is drinking. So, yeah, so that was I just knew but the thing is, I didn't want to go back to the rooms because I was ashamed, even though they're so welcoming. I didn't want to go back. Um, so yeah, it was awful, It was just a battle in my mind, like this moderation. And I even went and joined this which is called moderation management. It's basically just a load of people that need to stop drinking. And I was just like, no, I need to go back to AA. But I was so against it. You have so much resentment. There's so many excuses for why it's a bad thing. We know better, and but I needed that time, obviously. But yeah, I can't really remember that much. But then what happened was my therapist at the time, she's an amazing lady in Beijing. She was running a months long alcohol experiment inspired by Annie Grace. She's got the book This Naked Mind.
Yeah.
Um, so she's like, let's get sober for November. Her name is Masuma. She's amazing. She won't mind me naming her name. Uh, she has a tribe called Wild and One, and yeah, so she did the November container where we got sober for a month, 30 days. So at the end of November, I stayed clean again for December. Then I went to Sanya and I went to the bar. And I didn't have anyone in recovery to help me. I didn't have anything because this program had ended. So I drank, and I drank for a week straight. And that was the last time I drank. But it was awful that week because I knew I had to give up. I knew I had to go back into the program. And I remember going to a Brazilian restaurant eating, and they had wine. They had bottles of wine. So I had a bottle of red wine, and I was like, I'm going to take one away. All my friends were like, are you sure? I was like, yeah, it's fine. And it wasn't. And then, yeah, my last drink was on New Year's Eve. And then on January 1st, I was like, that is it. And then, yeah, and that's my sobriety date.
So
No.
when you said it was awful that last week, did you mean, because there's a few different things I think that it could mean, right? Because I understand too. Was it awful because you kind of knew like this was almost like your breakup week? Like
Yeah.
you kind of knew like this is the last time I'm going to be doing this and I'm going to really have to say goodbye to the old Amy?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was like grief, also hungover because I was drinking like every day. So the anxiety, the depression that comes with it, my nervous system's just like completely out of control, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, for sure. It's funny too. I remember, so there's been a lot of people in my friendship group and family that have known about my problem and stuff like as it came more public. And I remember my mom so many times she'd be like, "Why don't you just have a Dr. Pepper or a Coke?" And I'm like, actually, now that I'm sober and I look back, that's great advice because why not just drink something else? But in the moment, like you're talking about waking up, you're at the beach, you're hungover, you almost have no choice but to drink alcohol again so you can feel good enough to actually enjoy the day at the beach the next day. And then you drink all day that day, and it's the same thing. I mean, that's how when we went to the Philippines, like that's how that whole trip was to me. I never stopped drinking because if I did, I would have felt too bad to enjoy myself there. Um,
Exactly. And that trip, we all got away with it because we were all on the same like wavelength, right? You
yes.
know? But then this
Yes.
trip, it was like I was a bit more of an adult, you know, and people weren't doing that.
Hmm.
They were drinking at dinner or maybe a quick beer on the beach. Whereas I was like, right, get to the bar now. I need this feeling in my body to be numb so I don't feel scared, anxious, you know?
For sure. I think, yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And it's just crazy to know how common it must be in people that have the type of problems because you do get to a point where you're never enjoying the moment because all your mind is doing is thinking, let's get to the bar or let's go. I mean, even on nights out when I had been drinking all night and I knew the bar was shutting down, it's like, all right, let's get back to the house so we can have the after party. Like, that's not normal. I mean, okay, if you're 18, 19, 20, 21 in college or something and you do that, do I think that you're a bad person? No. But I'm saying for me, as a 29-year-old that was trying to advance in my career, that was not normal behavior. Um, Let me ask you this. You mentioned that when you get to that point, there's a bit of grieving because you know you can't drink anymore. And also, your friends, even they're kind of in grieving because it's like, oh, we can't hang out with Amy the same way or whatever. How has your relationship been with your friend group since, and I don't mean the new friends you've made since becoming sober, and you can tie that into it as well, but the individuals that you were friends with that you used to party and drink a lot with, since you've become sober, has that relationship changed like you thought it would? Or
Yeah, so I think like in Beijing we had a really tight, like small friendship group, right? And of course a lot of the friends there I knew from home. So we have stayed tight, you know, like the ones that we know, we are still very good friends. Um, but there's a lot of friends that I just saw to drink with, right? But the close friends, I would go and have dinner with them when I got sober. You know, my real close friends, we still stayed together, but I would ask them to go for dinner and then we wouldn't drink. And I was actually really lucky with that, with my friends in Beijing because they really understood. And I'm sure that sometimes it was a bit like strange, but they were all very, very supportive. So I was really lucky because they knew. Um, but of course, a lot of friends that I had on a Saturday night that I would see every single weekend that I would never speak to now. And there was even some friends in my friendship group that I thought I was really close with. I hung out with them for years, but now we don't talk because we've got nothing in common, you know? So it's like a friend for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, you know? And there's still a connection there, but yeah, definitely you clean house.
yeah, I mean, that's a good thing though, in some cases, right? Because the people that, like you mentioned, that are supportive and will stick with you, I mean, that's one thing like um, that I've been very lucky with is my girlfriend, she which she never drank a lot in the first place, but she basically doesn't drink at all anymore, or she doesn't. Sorry, not basically. She doesn't drink at all anymore because she's like, "You're not going to drink. I'm not going to drink. I got your back. You don't have to feel like you're missing out on something. So having the right people is so much more important than having a lot of people, I
Yeah.
think.
And for example, if I was the friend that was drinking and one of my friends got sober, I would find that very difficult, I think, because of the situation I was in. So it says a lot about your friends if they don't have an issue with it, you know? Like there's one friend that I had and we went on a journey when I got sober, right? We're still just as close, me and her. And we used to drink wine at every single opportunity that we could, right? But she stuck by me. We had an argument one night because, when I still wanted to go out, I still wanted to be part of it. And, my friends tried really hard to like make it around dinner, Saturday nights around dinner, and then they would still drink and it would trigger me because, you also can't expect people to completely change. Um, but it just says a lot about where they're at as well. The ones that don't react and the ones that can take it or leave it are the ones that don't have problems. But I'm super grateful to have all the friends that I had around me at those times, even the ones that aren't in recovery. Because a lot of them would then not drink around me as well. And I always used to think I couldn't do that if that was me. I'd
Yeah.
be like doing it anyway because you're so selfish and self-centered when you're addicted to alcohol, right? I could just imagine myself being like, well, I'm gonna drink.
I know what you mean for sure because I feel I never thought about that ever before, but I'm thinking now if like I was out with a couple of buddies and one of them didn't drink anymore, I'm like, well, that's your. I mean, do I need to not drink too? But so it's interesting to see it in that different perspective. Speaking of friends, we're going to talk in just a minute about you are building a really great community. But before, I just something came to my mind that I want to ask you. You've talked multiple times about triggers.
Mm.
I've been asked before, whether therapists, whoever, like, hey, what are your triggers? I mean, God, there's a million things. What do you think are the biggest triggers? Do you think it's people or places? Which one do you think is a bigger trigger, people or places? And I guess what are your personal triggers that you had to kind of work around?
Great question. So, triggers are mirrors, right? They are showing you where your work needs to be done, and it goes back to your childhood, right? Um, so, oh, you mean alcohol triggers, or you mean like, or both?
I was meaning alcohol, but go wherever you want to with it.
So, for me, triggers now, which is what I've learned about, is all about your childhood, right? And this is what the healing process is about. Every trigger is a teacher. Every person that triggers you is your teacher. They're mirroring something to you that you have not healed. And it usually goes back to love, not feeling enough love as a child, not feeling safe, not feeling worthy, etc., 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 right? Um, so yeah, that's been a journey. But as far as alcohol triggers being triggered by that is like right now where I am in PSAC, nobody drinks. So I'm like, because most people are on some kind of healing journey, and if they're drinking, it's not like in your face. Um, but yeah, obviously bars is not a good idea, especially during early sobriety. But now I can go into a bar and not feel triggered. In the beginning, I would be triggered by, yeah, seeing alcohol everywhere. Alcohol's everywhere, on the street, in advertisements, on the TV, so embedded into our culture, no matter where we are. Um, so yeah, those triggers have lessened now. Airports used to be the worst trigger for me. And recently I was just in the airport and I put a video on Instagram and I wasn't triggered at all. This was like a God moment. I was like, wow, like, oh my word. Because airports used to just be like, where can we get the drink? Let's check in quickly. Like, because we used to travel a lot, right? So we're like, how many drinks can we get before we get on the plane? Is the plane going to have enough drink for us to drink? What if we run out? What types do they have? Like it's just, so airports used to be a huge trigger, but now they're not. Thank the Lord.
I used to love going on trips to drink at the airport.
Yeah.
I mean, I always loved like, you're at the airport, you got the excitement, you're about to go somewhere new, but also you got maybe a little bit of anxiety because you're going to be on a plane. There's people from all over traveling. It's just like the perfect but you're traveling, you're getting on an airplane, so you feel productive. You feel like you're doing something cool. So it's okay to have some drinks. You're not like sitting at home being a bum. You're flying to some new destination. So I always was that way. And I have to say that that was one of the hardest places for me to avoid alcohol. And now what I try to do is as soon as I get into an airport, and I don't know if this is a common thing or if it's just the way my body is, caffeine really doesn't make me want to drink alcohol. I don't like having kind of a higher heart rate and then wanting to drink alcohol. So I always, no matter what time of day it is, I'll go into the airport as soon as I get checked in, I'll grab a coffee. Because if I have that coffee, I'm still enjoying that physical sensation of hanging out at the airport, having something to sip on, but I'm not wanting alcohol. So I had to learn that little trick for me. But yeah,
Yeah.
triggers are all over the place, but managing them obviously is the key.
Yeah, and it's the body. Triggers are in the body, right? So when a trigger comes, it's like, where is it? Like, where is it in my chest, in my stomach? And it's like breathing into that. And, knowing that that trigger is a message. It's not you, right? But we want to attack and say it's other people or other things. But it's just a reminder. It's putting up a mirror, you know? But yeah, I like what you said about the coffee. Like, I personally like to eat food and then I don't want to drink as
Okay.
well. So eating is, yeah, and soda water, you know. If you go to a meeting, everyone's drinking soda water.
I don't know if that's why I got into it, but that's all I drink anymore is soda water. And sometimes I'll
Yeah.
put a little bit of lime in it. Um, but yeah, anyways, so I was going to ask you about this. Your well, actually, one thing before I ask you that, because you mentioned food and I mentioned coffee. I've had people tell me, well, you're addiction swapping or whatever the case may be. I'm just going to say whatever. Even if that's the case, no one drinks coffee and then wrecks their car or beats their partner or freaking doesn't remember what they did the next day. Right. So at the end of the day, if I'm going to be addicted to something, I'd much rather be coffee than alcohol. So, whatever to that. But the breath work. All right. So, Devine Breath is your business. So, I've actually, until I started following your story on Instagram and Facebook and everything, I had never associated breath work with recovery. So, I'm like a blank slate when it comes to this. So, I'm very interested to know more.
Yeah, so when I got sober, I was going to meetings and then I went to this lovely lady called Masuma who was doing breathwork circles every single Tuesday. It was like a meditation night up in Chigny. And I worked there as well, near there. So every single Tuesday we would go there, we would go and meditate, but it would be based on breathwork. And afterwards, I would feel so good, relaxed, because the breath calms the nervous system. When your body has been numbed for so many years, when you stop drinking, it's out of control, right? The nerves, the anxiety. And once I got into learning how to to calm my nervous system through the breath, it became my new medicine, my new addiction, if you like. And I could do that every Tuesday, and I would have it in my practice in the morning. And during COVID times, we had online breath work every morning. And for addicts, like I'll get up at 5 a.m. and do breath work every single morning. To a normal person, that's like, what? No way. And I'm like, yes, I need it, kind of thing. But it's all about the body and relaxing the body and the feeling that you're getting from it. But the breath has so many benefits, and I got a lot of things, a lot of clarity around my drinking through the breathwork techniques as well. Um, it's magical, and I experienced like true gratitude, the feeling of true gratitude through breathwork. So it's like you can feel a lot of euphoria as well. You can feel it's like high on your own supply, basically, high on your own breath. Yeah. Addicted to breath now, and it's like, well, yeah, exactly. I'd much rather be addicted to breath than picking up a drink. Exactly, you know?
Yes, 100%. What do you think if someone is listening to this and they're at that point where maybe they've had some friends tell them you have a drinking problem, or maybe they've realized it themselves, or they're just sober curious, whatever? Do you think that getting like learning about breath work and maybe even following along online with some breath work sessions or something like that, do you think that's a good starting point? Do you think they should go right to AA? Do you think they should like find a coach like you to work with online? Like, what do you think would be the best first step for someone like just right out the gates?
So for me, when I got sober, I was in denial, right? So there was I never actually had that thought process of like, I need help. So for me, speaking from my own experience, I went into AA, but the breath work really helped me gain clarity around what I was doing, right? I did a breath work and I wasn't questioning my alcoholism. It was the mind then, when I wasn't doing breath work, that would like, con me into thinking I'm not an alcoholic or whatever. So I think that it's completely, where people feel drawn to. There is online recovery and things like that. But I think a mixture of things, like um, a holistic plan is very much needed. So, like, what I find from recovery is it's amazing. The 12 steps are absolutely amazing, but I personally had a very dysregulated nervous system. And if I didn't get into doing breath work, I probably would have drank again, maybe because, these things are not addressed in AA. And the shadow work, the inner child work, isn't in AA. So that's why I'm kind of like taking bits from all different things. But if there's a woman listening and, you know, there's so many routes that you can go down. I guess what you would do is you would look at these people, you would look at people's profiles, you would see if you resonate, and then you would go based on your own intuition. So like what I hold, I have a online community, a sober sisterhood just for women to share what's going on, which is the same as what happens at AA meetings. When you share your story, it's so powerful. When you're held in a safe container, and then when you do breath work, it's super, super powerful. So there's no one way to do it. I think it just really depends on the person where they feel a pull, but you have to just look around and see who you resonate with, what story you resonate with.
That makes sense. The Sober Sisterhood. I was about to ask you about that, so perfect segue. Can you tell us like how you started the community and how it's grown? And then also, let's just start there, but I've got one other question I want to ask about it. But yeah, just how did you start it? How has it grown? And what about the importance of community on your sobriety journey?
So community is key, and that's why recovery is so powerful because it's community. Recovery cannot be done alone. If you do it alone, it's very lonely, and you know, having fellows on the same journey is like super important because you relate and you belong, and that's what we want to do. We want to belong. So the Sober Sisterhood, I had an idea in January to do a dry January breathwork group online. And I had 9 women, and we met every week for 4 weeks, and we did breathwork. And it was just kind of an idea. So I was working with cacao medicine. You know cacao?
I
It's a
do.
medicine from Mayan culture. Yeah, so I did like a diet. It was 10 days of just drinking cacao and very, very healthy food. And cacao brings a lot of creativity. So I was already on this path of breath work, and I was like, okay, I I got this idea, dry January, and lots of people were kind of like messaging me about sobriety and things like that. So I was like, right, let's do dry January together. But I also brought in like the elements and things like that. So the dry January went really, really well. But of course, in January, it was finished. So I'm like, okay, I need to do this. Like the testimonials, the feedback that I got. Um, so now I've created another Sober Sisterhood where people who are already sober, people who are sober curious, people who know that alcohol is having a negative effect on their life, and we meet every second Sunday and we do breath work. And there is a WhatsApp group where we can share resources, we can support each other, etc., etc. So this is just recently opened. It's going really well. Just to be part of a group, you've got accountability, you've got support and things like that. And it's like when women get together in a group to support each other, something magical happens. The same as with men, right? There's work to be done together, there's also work to be done separately. And I feel just because I'm a woman, and this is what I found in the beginning of sobriety to be very important, to be around other women, even though I had a lot of male fellows, which I really, really love and I'm so grateful for. This space is where you can really be vulnerable and be honest about the journey. So it's really beautiful. And after each session, there's always so much feedback around, like, I felt safe to share, it's great to be on the journey. And there's a lot of old history about women getting together because women trigger each other. Women have always been in competition for centuries, right? It's an ancestral thing. But when you meet in a group with the same intention to heal and to grow, we can really start to heal those. It's called the sister wound, right? And something beautiful happens, building these deep connections. When someone says I can't give up drinking and the other one says it's just connection. If someone says, oh, I woke up in the wrong bed this weekend or something like that, and someone else does it's pure vulnerability and authenticity, because you don't talk about these things around the table at dinner. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to connect deeply. So yeah, as you can see, I'm very passionate about it, and yeah, I just love holding this space for women, and I'm witnessing them grow. Like after the dry January, some of the women are still sober, and it's just incredible. I just see them glowing, and it's because they felt safe and heard and part of a group.
Yeah, that's amazing. You actually I didn't even ask the other question I was going to ask, and you answered a lot of it right there about the target for women, and is what I've noticed since I've gotten a little bit into this space as well, and want to obviously help people and things like that. I've noticed there seem to be more open communities for women. I see more women's sobriety groups. Why do you think it is that there's not maybe as much of that for men? Um, do you think it's needed more in the women community? Do you think men just don't like to talk about it? I mean, I know my thoughts, but I'm curious as to what you think.
I think there's definitely, I mean, it would be amazing if more men can step up and create these groups because they are so needed. And of course, it's harder for men to be vulnerable, right? But when they are, it's the most beautiful thing ever. But I think there are male groups for sure out there. Personally, like, I don't know how many, but I'm seeing more and more male groups, men like going out into the woods and having retreats and things like that. But the men are rising also, but of course women are more vulnerable naturally. Um, but yeah, I don't know if I should say that because men are too, but I think it's easier for women to generally talk about their things than it is for men. But there's a desperate need for more men's groups. I do know that.
What took you to Peru? I mean, you could have done this, I guess, anywhere in the world. You
Yeah.
you have the ability to travel and go, especially with your online community. It looks like you do a lot of stuff in person, but with the online community, you could do that anywhere. What made you go to Peru, and is what makes that a good place for what you're doing?
Okay, so this place called Pisac is a kind of spiritual haven for people that are on the path, and there's a lot of plant medicine in this side of the world, um, like ayahuasca, wachuma, also known as San Pedro, which is also very good for addiction and healing. I don't know if you know anything about plant medicine, but it's a, yeah, do you?
Not much, so feel free to share whatever,
Yeah.
because even if I knew, I would want other people to that may not know. But yeah, I'm pretty much a blank slate.
Yeah, well, do you know Gabor Mate?
I do not.
He is a psychologist who works with addiction, and basically, I watched his documentary called The Wisdom of Trauma, and it talks about how ayahuasca can help with addiction. And he's from Canada, and he worked with drug addicts, and that's where I first heard about ayahuasca. So I felt the calling to sit with this plant medicine quite a long time ago. However, I was kind of warned against it in the program because, it's seen as something scary, but actually it's a medicine. So it's a medicine that's used amongst indigenous tribes on this side of the world, in Brazil, in Peru, in the Amazon jungle, and it's for deep healing, basically. So I sat with the medicine, and I can say that that is what took out any need for me to drink alcohol anymore once I sat with this medicine. After that, I didn't have any cravings anymore. But the world is so shut off from these medicines for many reasons, right? We live in the matrix, but they're such an amazing tool. However, they need to be used properly, and they needed to be guided with professionals, and integration is like the most important thing with these medicines. So Peru is the land of plant medicine, spiritual communities, and in my first ever ceremony, I met a couple who live in this town. So they said, when you go on your travels, come and visit. Um, So yeah, lots of deep work can be done in this place, and I felt the calling to come and yeah, offer my offerings, but also receive.
That's really a really cool story. When you say you sat with it, the plant medicine, what is that? Is it like a 1 day, 2 day? Is it like a week long thing? Like what is?
Yeah, so the first time I sat was in the UK, and it's a ceremony. So you're sitting in a circle and you drink the medicine. And so ayahuasca is a feminine medicine. So it's we call her the grandmother. And when you drink the medicine, it takes you, I mean, everybody has a different experience, but for me, it took me back to being a child, and I could see myself being a child. So much healing could happen um, in this space, and it took me to all my hungover days, all the things I did, and for the most part of my ceremony, I was literally, um, purging all of that out. And after that ceremony, it changed my life completely. Like I was a new person. So I went back to Beijing as a completely different person. Like I just, kind of been saved in a way, it felt like. And then, yeah, I knew that I wanted to continue the path of healing, but so what happened was I didn't tell my sponsor about it because they've got a lot of judgment around plant medicine because they're scared of it. They think it's a drug, but actually it's a medicine. So I met one of my very good friends now. He's one of my best friends, and I was telling him my worries in my ceremony about telling my sponsor, and I need my recovery, and I don't know how to continue. And he said, "Do you know about PIR?" I was like, "What's that?" And it's called Psychedelics in Recovery. So it's the 12 step that allow plant medicine with guidance, with, intention settings, etc., etc. Um, so yeah, and then I went from there because there's so much to learn, from these medicines. They're sacred plant medicines, but obviously you have to be careful in addiction because people can sometimes, go down that route, um, and replace it, right? That's why integration's so important. And you come to the valley and there's people doing it very often. But it's very important. You can do it often, but it's very important that you're doing the work in between. So when you take the medicine, you receive a lot of information. And integrating that into your daily life is difficult, but that's the work, right? So it might show you certain things about your relationships, but you could just drink the medicine and forget about it. Like uncomfortable conversations, saying no, all these different things, and which is what it's made me do. Like these uncomfortable conversations that you really don't want to have with people because you don't want to upset people. It's kind of like a fuel for that.
Mm.
So if you just ignore it and you continue to, allow people to walk all over you and don't use your voice and say no, then you're not doing the work. It's about claiming responsibility. Um, so yeah, plant medicines are an incredible tool, for healing, and I've seen my whole life basically repeat, and you get a lot of understanding around why. But actually, I lost my best friend through addiction. He passed away 4 years ago from a heroin overdose. And he told me, it's quite funny because I have our conversation on my phone. He told me about plant medicine and he told me about breath work, but I was drinking at the time. He'd already told me about it. So, but I was very, very close to it. So when he passed away, that was also a reason why I wanted to look at my addictions as well. Because he said to me, because basically I didn't understand addiction very much, and I was pretty much really, really scared that he was using heroin. And I shouted at him, I was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? And he said, Amy, look at yourself. And I was like, oh. So when my roommate said that thing to me and he said that and he passed away, it was like an opening for me to actually look at myself. Anyway, I've gone off, but yeah, it was always going to come into my path. Um, but I think it's really about finding your way. And Peru is such a beautiful place. Like I'm in the middle of the Andes. There's a lot of healing work. There's a lot of music here, and I'm learning to do all these things that we used to do before there was drinking and things like that. I'm in community. I'm sitting around a fire. People are playing music, and we're connecting. We're having deep conversations. And I'm really attracted to that kind of life.
Yeah, I think that's really amazing. I really do. I would love definitely to come down and visit at some point for sure.
Please do.
Um,
Please do.
I gotta do Machu Picchu,
Yeah.
right? So, but would love obviously to come see you and hang out. So
Yeah.
I guess to kind of, I mean, well, I could go forever, but just kind of to put a bow on some of this, what do you think are some of the main indicators that someone should look out, um, or reach out for some sort of help, or at least look online, see what they can find, start getting sober curious? Like, are there anything, because I know you got like the extreme end, right? Like your liver starts failing. Okay. But I think there's a lot of people who have drinking problems decades before it gets to that level, right? But they're still hurting their life, or at least I was very much so. What do you think are some of the main signs, I guess, to be aware of?
Um, can I have one?
Yeah.
That's always, what's my thoughts around? It's always the thought, it's the obsession, right? So it's the obsession about the alcohol or whatever the addiction might be. Am I thinking about it a lot? Is it making my life unmanageable? So is it getting in the way of my work, my relationships? You know, can I go a weekend without drinking? Do I keep drinking even though I'm saying that I'm not going to? How am I feeling? when I'm drinking? Am I doing it to numb? The chances are, if you think that alcohol is having a negative effect on your life, then it is. You know, we make a million excuses for it. We live in a world, unfortunately, that it's completely romanticized. And on the TV, if you watch TV, if you don't have a glass of wine in your hand, then you're not having fun. We are completely conditioned and programmed to believing that alcohol is associated with having fun and celebration, when actually it's the opposite. Um, and we need it to connect, etc. So yeah, if you feel like, I mean, try and have some time off. If you can't, then it's a good sign. You know, there's lots of things out there. There's 12 steps. Um, you know, if people are listening on this call, they are more than welcome to reach out to myself and you know, it's definitely worth reaching out to someone and speaking about it. But I will say that when you stop drinking, that's the first part you put down the drink. The reason why we drink is because of the pain that's underneath. So a lot of people, I see a lot of people stop drinking for a month and then they go back to it and they say, oh, I'm only drinking once a week. But if you're drinking once a week, you're not dealing with your work, right? The inner child stuff. And what I mean by inner child stuff is your childhood trauma. And we all have it. No matter what you say, we all have it. Parents cannot, any parent cannot be there for you as much as you need, even if they're a perfect parent. So we have a lot of traumas around that. So yeah, I would say reach out if you're unsure. But the chances are, if you think that alcohol is having a negative effect on your life and you can't have some time off, then there's a problem there. But what I'm learning is when I first went into recovery, I was taught that I have a disease, I'm going to have it forever. I've now dropped the label that I'm an alcoholic, which has been a new thing. I'm never going to be able to drink alcohol again, and I have to be careful with it, but I'm not carrying that label anymore, which is what I felt like in the program, in the 12 steps. And I'm not saying don't go to the 12 steps. The 12 steps is amazing. The program that they have in place, everyone should do it, you know, even if you're not an alcoholic or an addict, whatever. So just yeah, I would explore breathwork, I would explore bodywork practices, I would try and sit in meditation, but it is active work that needs to be done, which is generally going back and looking at your life, looking at the wrongs, looking at your resentments, cleaning house with support in community. So yeah, if any women are listening and they are interested in this, please reach out.
And Amy, what are your socials? Where can everyone find you? Because sometimes it may take a minute to get up the courage to reach out, but at least they can see a lot of your really good information.
So my Instagram is devine.breath, Devine dot breath. That's on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook, the same name. I've just got on TikTok and I'm also on WeChat. If you want to do it via email or more kind of anonymous, we can probably put it in the notes, right? But it's
Yep.
amy at devinebreath.com is my personal email.
Okay, and yes, the in the description, I'll have all your socials laid out where people can find you. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it for now. But I mean, I just again, I love the work you're doing. Like we go way back, and it's really cool to see the positive impact that you're having. I love it, and yeah, I think that is the most amazing thing. So thanks for taking some time out to hang out tonight and talk about it.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Darian. And I feel like I wish we spoke a bit more about you as well. But yeah, I'm so looking forward to connecting more.